now we will go through panel number 4, which is about civil society in a digital world / adapting to the convergence of technology, humanity, and ethics. Hashtag the 5th industrial revolution. Our world is changing rapidly, and we need to connect on a human level. It has caused discourse driven by fear of the unknown. We aim to explore this further, showing future insights of the changes and ways in which we can inspire a positive way forward. So for this panel, I'm glad to introduce once again Kilian Kleinschmidt, who will be speaking along with Gerard Hofer. So welcome to Gerard online. And I'm not sure about Ervira Poshko, Vasily.
She may be on the call with Gerard, but we can, I don't know, can you make Gerard's video? Oh, there he is. So
hello, everybody. Actually, she couldn't manage it. You know, okay. Okay, sorry.
No problem.
But
No problem.
I try to do and give my best.
Thank you so much.
With you as well, and Rudy.
Hello.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So basically, for our new viewer, I will quickly introduce Kilian Kleinschmidt once again, and then please, Gerard. I'm sorry, I don't have information. So would you, after introduce Kilian, introduce yourselves, and then you will go for panel number 4, guys. So yeah, for our new viewer, for now's panel, we are with Kilian Kleinschmidt, who is an international networker, humanitarian, and refugee expert with over 25 years of experience in a wide range of countries, emergencies, and refugee camps as United Nations official, aid worker, and diplomat. He has founded and is currently the CEO of the Startup Innovation and Planning Agency, IPA, which aims to connect marginalized parts of the globe with the technological resources and know-how needed to catalyze change. So once again, welcome, Kilian, and please, Gerard, introduce yourself. Thank you.
Okay, hello everybody. My name is Gerhard or Gerard, no matter. A few years ago, I founded or co-founded an international-oriented innovation platform, which we called I4X, stands for Innovation for X. And what we are focused on is the development of future models, but not only as a theory, but for us it is very, very important to make it real, to make things happen. And this led at a certain point to the creation and invention of it's kind of an event. We call it Moonshot, and its purpose was to create within only 72 hours real projects out of a previously unknown idea. And we create this as kind of a human supercomputer with around about 100 or up to 150 real experts from different fields. So you can imagine it like you drop in with an idea, you get the moonshot process, and you go on with your own ready and marketable company. So you're fine with that, or
yeah, that's a perfect introduction. Thank you very much, Gerard. So just with the discussions, and thank you for joining a bit earlier. We've been discussing, for example, we were saying, well, what solutions can we implement? And then the thing is, before you can implement these, what is the context? What's the requirement? What is the need that we want to address? And we had a really good discussion in terms of setting up a foundation or a physical platform that through which we can work and bring diverse people together to co-create. Because if we brainstorm and we bring the idea, how does it get implemented? So Killian was talking about foundation and as a hub of activities and different activities. And then we were talking about the context of the solutions and the smart cities and the thematic approach, and what type of programs could we use to actually launch those initiatives. And then we showed some examples as well. And lastly, for example, you can use thermometers with Internet of Things that can send details to the hospitals, to government, to whoever it is. To capture that information as one of the solutions. And the other point was, so how we could create a platform through blockchain that connects that community. But so exchanging various ideas, but I think, so with all these different components, I think what would be nice is, and with this moonshot idea, concept, these different things that exist, how do we actually physically launch them? Killian, like already mentioned, so let's get the team going based on the discussions we've had, that he wants to and suggested that we get this thing going off. So I'd like you to just share some thoughts on that, and then after that, if Killian can make the presentation, and then we can have a discussion on that presentation, perhaps some practical steps that could be taken, just to some creative thinking around that type of presentation or additional things. So if anyone else has got thoughts, but yeah, that's what I suggest.
Okay, I'm fine. I'm fine with that.
So, Killian, would you like to share some thoughts on that?
Sorry, I was actually having lunch at the same time. Now I'm back. Okay.
Welcome back.
Hi.
Okay. And, I think, and also for those who may have joined since then, we're talking about the need to look at people on the move from a different aspect, from a different perspective. We need to move away from looking at those as a new species who's just landed on Earth and in the middle of places and so on. They're part of an interconnected world, which, however, despite all the connections, is not as connected as we would think and hope for in the 21st century. So there's an absolute need to create the tools and instruments so that people from different backgrounds and from different ideas with the solutions for what I would call rather opportunities rather than needs. Needs is negative. Demands are negative. I mean, it's much more an opportunity which needs to be seized and developed together. Moving away from the geek and the geek world, and where people sort of constantly have solutions for somebody else. It's a question of how we create solutions together and with each other, with different aspects, with different perspectives, with different backgrounds. And again, keeping in mind that out of the 7.5 billion people or so on Earth, most people are not as digital as we think for the moment, but there are examples of where that has happened. I mean, I'm looking at Rwanda, for instance, as an example where, I mean, I would say a rather robust government, to be gentle, has actually created a world in which suddenly, because the man has said, the leader has said, well, if we continue that way, and being in an overpopulated poor country with subsistence agriculture as the background, we will kill each other again. So we need to move into the next millennium, and so every single village in Rwanda is gradually being connected to a cable network and so on and so forth. So here in that context, we need to look at this as well. What are the tools to help Lesbos, including currently, and hopefully that will reduce at some point, 25,000 newcomers. How to connect Lesbos also with the 21st century, to connect Lesbos with the ideas, the tools, the technologies, and actually work together on these opportunities an island in the Aegean and the Mediterranean has, regardless whether it's Greek, Turkish, Tunisian, or Italian, or whatever. So we need to look at that, of how to vitalize and how to enable things to happen there, which should be happening anyway. More sustainable ways of energy generation, waste management, environmental issues, a more responsible tourism, jobs of the future, etc., etc. So that's where we were in the last discussion in a way, and that's where we need to continue working on the instruments of how to make that happen, how to make that co-creation happen. And I think we're seeing different tools, different instruments emerging. We talked about sort of an immediate use of the multitude of virtual platforms and so on. Again, my concern is that not everybody feels comfortable with this and has access to this, and it's again sort of a limited community usually. There was my proposal to move that and really anchor that underground at the beach, ideally in Lesbos, with a location where we build bridges, where all sorts of people can come together, and it's not limited to one or the other sort of groupings and typology of people. Yes, it will be about digital nomads, it will be about startups, but it will be also how basically the olive tree grower from Lesbos can actually go in there and thinks that it's interesting for him that there is new ways of looking at olive processing. By the way, my lunch was prepared with salt from Lesbos. Salt, yes.
Really?
More than Lesbos.
That's from Kaloni. That's fantastic. That's in Tunisia, out of all places.
Yeah, I brought it back from Amsterdam. So I mean, that's again about global connectivity.
Love of Lesbos. Lots of Lesbos.
Lots of Lesbos is here in Tunis with me.
Fantastic.
So I was thinking about this when I was putting my salt on my turkey breast. So I mean, anyway, so that's sort of the first two instruments we have been discussing, and I think it is now time that maybe Gerd talks about the concept of co-creation in an accelerator, which is in fact the moonshot concept. And then, of course, all of these things need and can and must flow together. And build up that sort of that interconnectivity between the many things which are going on, taking people out of their silos, breaking up these barriers, building these bridges, and that is, I think, the task we are here together to discuss in this forum.
Perfect. Thanks for setting that up, Kilian. Perfect. Gerard, over to you.
Okay. If we're talking about the moonshot, I would like to open with some statements, key facts. Okay, just to step in and to give the possibility to understand the vision behind a bit better. First of all, we are losing time because we don't use chances. Okay, and if you don't use chances, you don't use potential, and this endangers a common future, okay? A useful future. We talk too much, we act too less. I think it was Charlie Chaplin from the Big Dictator, this quote. A few years ago, I think almost 4 years ago now, we were thinking about creation and co-creation, because we understood that on one hand there is, sorry to use it, Kilian, it's your quote, it's always about demand and supply. And that's crazy because there is lots of demands, there is lots of supply. But the problem is you cannot really connect it together, which is freaky, because if you look at this, this smartphone could potentially connect 7.5 billion people, okay? But this don't happen. So we approached it as follows. We were thinking about all those big ideas which would provide impact, okay? So why does this impact not happen? And the answer was because we lose time and we don't use the potential. And so we thought, what would be if we had this one big idea, and our job was to create a marketable company out of it, because economical issues are always somehow the leverage. Okay, if you want something to happen, there's always some kind of economy behind that. Okay, and so we said, what does a company consist of? There is marketing, there are human resources agenda, there is a product, there is a philosophy, and so on and so on. And so we said, let's try to combine all the expertise you need in one place for only 3 days, and just let people work. Let them unleash their potential and make them to work on just one job, just around the core of an idea. And so we did that for the first time back in 2017, and it was a huge success, because if you just let people do what they want to do and what they can do, something great will happen. So that's basically the idea behind the moonshot. And do this under certain rules. Probably the most important is all are equal. No one is responsible for one task alone, and so on. Yeah, and what we learned about this is that you can connect people and you can merge them for a certain period into a human supercomputer, which is not only a knowledge computer, but which is also a very emotional computer. And if you do that, you can understand what creation really means. So we think that a procedure like the moonshot could really could really change the world or a certain area. And that's the point. We're always talking about things we don't really need. What we need is we just have to meet up. We have to work on a solution, and we can do everything.
Can I add something on this?
Of course, Leon. You've been part of the moonshot 2 times. You can tell this probably way more better than me.
Okay, I mean, what is the fascinating thing is that you bring together in this concept, and I've experienced this myself, a couple of times, actually 3 times, that bringing the expertise together. This is what I call as well the global brain. There's another concept we're working on, which is the global brain. I mean, a child learns how to walk because there's more and more connections happening in the brain. And so in that sense, how do you promote these connections to take place? How do you speed up that process? I mean, learning, extreme learning, for instance, which is, by the way, something we're using with one of our partners in coding as well, extreme learning, where you really immerse everybody in the subject for a while, bringing here different aspects together in one room. And in the case of the moonshots, Gerhard and the team have been organizing up to 100 people who bring their brains together into one brain. And so again, I mean, if you transmit that or translate that into the global perspective, so how do we build the global brain of interconnectivity so that the child, which is the globe, walks better and functions better and becomes more sustainable? Looking at that, what Gerhard and the team have been doing in the context of startups and new ideas, it also occurred to me that this is, in fact, an issue we have in the so-called development world, where the development agencies, humanitarian agencies, governments, and so on, have usually a silo approach to things. There would be an assessment of the situation and working on a problem or a situation from one aspect. You would look at whatever, small and medium enterprise revitalization. You would look at agriculture. You would look at energy and so on. And that happens in isolation. Very rarely you would find a holistic approach, an area-based approach, let's call it like that, where you bring in all the different aspects and the interconnectivity between the different aspects. So here, what we are talking about, and that was also why we are now in this panel, is to look at the Lesbos child, if you want, to grow faster, because you're bringing in that sort of interconnectivity and concentrate it and create an amazing synergy within a few days, where you come up with a number of work streams out of this. You're bringing in the agriculturalists together with the tech people, with the tourism experts, with the small and medium enterprise people, with the educational people, and so on and so forth. And out of this, you come up with a more holistic, sort of very concrete set of actions which you can pursue. We are doing this currently, and we're looking into that as well in southern Tunisia, in an area which is totally depopulated, again, very, very challenged by environment and so on. It's the same thing. Bringing in different expertise from different aspects, and actually keeping in mind the overall goal, which is, well, there is a space which deserves actually solutions which are available. And that's the idea why, in fact, there is a suggestion to do that again, and we should see this in connectivity with the other proposed instruments we have been discussing, to do that in Lesbos as soon as possible, so that there is actually there's a comprehensive, let's call it a plan, coming out of this with very concrete projects in the different fields.
Excellent, Kilian. I absolutely love that, and I would like to suggest perhaps maybe if you would like to make the presentation with the thought that the baby, if you like, is the Lesbos as a tech hub. Tech hub is broad, but with your presentation, it can be more focused. And as you said, there's various angles to it. I mean, Lesbos has got an incredible agricultural sector, the tourism sector, and many other sectors. And even from the green economy perspective, the university has got a department of environmental department, and also of geography with the ocean. Anyway, so they've got some and the Department of Technology, and so they've got certain departments that are, if you like, certain fields that having their buy-in, and if you speak with the university and get their buy-in on for this, and obviously with the mayor and or the premier, this moonshot would be an amazing project to do, and look to implement this presentation that you've put together, which is Beach Hub Lesbos. So, yeah, you go ahead and present it. And then, Dimitri, after that, you can get some thoughts, or just to go back to Gerard, and then Dimitri, some thoughts, and we can discuss that then. And again, this is on a local level. The question is, these technologies, that if they do come and we implement them on Lesbos, given the massive problems and challenges that we have, the thinking is, how do you take those solutions across Europe that have impact? And that will be the next panel discussion, because we're saying we want to have a network of co-working spaces that look to exchange best practices and ideas and learnings from one another. So, yeah.
But I don't know how to do this, actually.
You just click on you've shared it. When you press your share screen in the middle, you find the document. So when you press the share screen, as you shared your screen, you go and you upload your document. So not your screen.
Can you see it now or not?
Yes, that's it. Perfect. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And I'm keeping it that way for the moment. If this is fine, because don't challenge me on tech. Because I'm a total ignorant when it comes to tech. But anyway, so we're coming back a little bit to the previous panel and the instrument where we're talking about setting up the hub, as we call it. It's sort of shaped very much to a number of concepts which are prevalent throughout Europe and also increasingly Asia. We do not have something like that in Africa yet. That's why we're working on that in Tunis. So let's call it as a working title, Youth and Technology Hub on the beach. Oh, sorry, I actually connected you with the wrong file. This is the Tunis one. So I would need to look into just a sec.
Should I put mine and you read through it? I could do that. It said Lesbos, by the way, didn't it?
No, now we have. You have it? You can see it?
No, you've got your screen. You haven't shared the document. You shared your screen.
Yeah, my screen is the document, no? Can you share it?
Sure.
Because you're better than me.
You cannot spell screen share. Oh, I can't. You have to exit your screen share first. Okay, yeah. Let me try.
Okay. Sorry for that, but I really always struggle, and I'm still learning Zoom. So
No worry.
Oh gosh, I don't have it on. I've got it on my other computer. Can you email it to me at changemakerslab@gmail.com quickly? So, and maybe we can continue the discussion in the meantime. There, you shared it.
Okay.
That's it. Yeah. Awesome.
Okay, so we talked about the Youth and Technology Hub on the beach in Lesbos, Greece. Thinking about here to create the ultimate destination. This is sort of the elevated investor pitch in a way. The ultimate destination for holidays, learning, co-working, meeting, and building a global, a global community. We actually think of this as a social business venture for Lesbos. So there is a business case in there. It's not about charity. It's not about that. A place where, and again, coming back to the previous slide, we have a hotel, we have a co-working facilities, we have labs, maybe a fab lab and other facilities to do work. We have an academy where training is taking place, long-term, short-term, medium-term training. The technology plays a major role, because in view of possibilities and opportunities, which a location, and we talked about smart villages and things like this, certainly play a role. There's, of course, the beach, there's fun, there's entertainment, there's things happening in arts and culture. That all basically is based on combining work, business, experience, learning, training, living, and hospitality. It's a unique space that combines solutions for different needs, using the local resources in a sustainable and profitable way. That's quite important when we talk about such larger projects. In here, we would then, of course, looking into creating within that facility the co-working, the co-creation, the networking possibilities. We talked about good connectivity, using the different tools, making them available, working on the latest technologies for internet-based interaction and co-creation. But of course, there is sort of the general overall experience in there, which is work, fun, and then of course a good level of hospitality as well. And so you're creating through that a space where community becomes possible. Community is not just about networks. It's about people who have who begin to know each other, who lose in fact the limits of what you usually would have between people who don't talk to each other usually, and so on. So you're creating that. You're having in there, of course, all the facilities for health, again, everything what needs to do with educational training facilities, as we said, labs, which can go in all directions. Of course, it can be a training academy for hospitality and restaurants, etc., etc. So you would offer in there accommodation services, short, midterm, and longer-term deals, which again accommodates different types of clients, if you want. There would be everyone would be the customer, from students to workers to, again, the local people coming for day events. Maybe they want to spend the weekend there because something interesting is happening. So it's a modern place which is forward looking. There's catering, it has all the different events, parties, birthdays, anniversaries, conferences, you name it. So what would be the next steps in here? We would need to find a location. We would need to build a team, obviously, to develop a business plan, design the spaces and the activities, build a partner network, because it would be made available to a global partner network who would come in either virtually or physically. Of course, we would need to establish a company. We would need to invest, obtain the investment, which would be, I mean, to be honest, in the millions of euros eventually. And then, of course, build and operate the space. This is all about social entrepreneurship. If we look at it, we really want to think outside the box. We want to create a place which is unique in that sense, building up and the connectivity of Lesbos with similar spaces all over the world, with lots of partners all over the world. So that is, in a couple of minutes, the basic concept of the hub. That, of course, needs time to build up. Yeah, so that's where we are.
Sounds like a very, very good plan. It's a big vision. And from my point of view, I think that a couple of moonshots could help. But what you're talking about, more or less, as far as I understand, is, or probably it could be a good idea that we changed or turned Lesbos into a real big living lab for, or more or less into a global living lab, because this could be very interesting. You mentioned before, or you compared it with a child that needs to be educated, and I think this is a great vision. Did you think a bit more about this? Is there anything like a timeline and so on, or how should or could this be started going on? Kilian.
Yeah, I mean, this sort of occurred to me because we're building something similar here in Tunis.
Yeah.
Obviously, these are bigger projects, and as a you would not do that. That requires time. It requires investment. It needs to convince people to put in whatever 5 or 10 million or whatever euros at least. So do you have a space which really functions? Now, that's why I think the discussion we have had so far is important, because it sort of designs the different stages of things. So creating that brain, creating that interconnectivity, that is something we can do pretty fast. And in a way, this is already happening here. And this could be built up into something more structured in a way where there is a regular sort of exchange and thematic discussions with leading to actual projects, to actual initiatives and so on, while we're working on the moonshot as sort of a booster. I see the moonshot exercise as a booster. And then, I mean, a project like this honestly, it takes at least 1.5 to 2 years, the minimum, to be off the ground. So this is not something, it's not a fast track activity. That's why I think it's important to build up something before that, which is creating and building up on the dynamic around the attention Lesbos has for the moment. As I say, look into a moonshot in a few months, which brings together that brain capacity, the brains, the solutions, the tech solutions, the concepts, best and worst practice, and so on, and saying and bringing that into very concrete action. So I think there's different stages, and so I really see this as sort of the end. Well, not the end. This is the next bigger stage, is to have this hub in operation, and we can create that virtual hub before already, and sort of confirm that in through a moonshot get together where we're bringing in the experts to further co-create the final activities. That's again also, as I mentioned before, as an approach we are trying now in southern Tunisia, in a very stunning place, where we want to bring through a series of workshops. Actually, we're building up a global community around that particular place called Douet, which has architectural wealth, which has climate change challenges, but also opportunities, and it has lots of possibilities around the income generating business streams and tourism. So it's something similar where you're building up the project as you move on. And it's very important not to have preconceived ideas. And I think this is the whole discussion we have been having today, is all around that. There is not such a thing as we decide now, we basically write up a project and we go to donors, and then it will be, that's it. This is work in progress. There should not be a finished, finalized product from day one. That's work in progress, and that can only happen if as many people as possible contribute.
I agree. I totally agree, Kilian. First of all, a few minutes ago, you were talking about those silos, okay? Silos thinking. One of the secrets why the moonshot works is that we work on all tasks in parallel and not as a sequence. So referring to the Lesbos hub, I have a few questions. First of all, shouldn't there be a bigger context, because it is one hub on an island, okay? But first of all, I think what important steps before are, for example, the inclusion of the Lesbos locals, okay? And then it's also a question of kind of a positioning statement, because we probably could make Lesbos or turn Lesbos into a very well-educated child. Okay, as I mentioned before, it could be a living lab for the world, because we are facing so many problems. Not only about migration, it's climate, it's environment, pollution, and so on and so on. So probably we could change Lesbos into some kind of a perfect place. But what else would we need beyond a hub where people can work whatever they want to do there. Have you ever thought about this? What about if we think it in the biggest possible scale from the beginning on?
Yeah, but again, I mean, this concept is applicable anywhere in the world, and it's basically building up in Europe, which is, at least until recently, was wealthy and well connected, and people spend a lot of money on thinking about new ways of co-working and co-creating and so on. And that's where concepts such as the student hotels, and again, I mean, that's also very much connected to movement on the ground and Lesbos and so on already, has been successful because it's such a space. Of course, again, and that's, and I repeat myself here, that's why we talked about building up a community around this already. And I think this is where I think Vasily and the team and the people who have been speaking here are challenged to think of how we could already put in challenges which are available to a global community. And then again, elevating issues, invisible issues, to make them visible and accessible to people who are saying, yeah, but we have done that and it works this and this way in our place. So why don't we look at it from that perspective and so on? So that can be done basically immediately. So there's no delay in this. As I said, for me, the hub is just the physical confirmation, and it would help also to bring less connected people, and that people living in Lesbos, into something which is attractive, where things are happening, where they can go, and where there's an activity ongoing, which is of interest, where people can learn, where they can get new ideas. I mean, as I said, the olive tree farmer can go and finally gets eventually some new stimulus for his products and how to do that, maybe some other products, and so on and so forth.
Okay, just to get it right, sorry for interrupting you. There are more target groups. It's not about refugees, asylum seekers, but also to startup guys from around the world, or who is exactly the target group?
So you missed actually the previous discussion to a large extent. So we're talking about different types of communities. So we're having a global, the startups, the geeks, the people who have technology solutions, also very traditional also companies and researchers and scientists and whatnot, all have something to offer.
Okay. You
have the tourists who are looking for something else. So there's a different type of tourism emerging increasingly in many places. Greece in general has to, and this was my observation when I lived in Greece, has to adapt to this new type of people looking for other opportunities. There are the digital nomads, there's students, there's institutions which look for spaces where they can carry out work, where they can have conferences, workshops, and so on. I mean, in that interconnected world, so we have definitely different, let's call them, although I don't like the word communities, which would be accessing and would be sort of harnessed by a physical location as well as a digital platform solution.
Okay.
You bring all that together, and there's a very important part again, which is this sort of the access to people who are less digitally connected today, and so on. So obviously the newcomers in Lesbos would be, of course, part of that. There would be part of it included in the, let's say, target quote unquote customers. But at the same time, they are not the prime, let's say, beneficiaries or so of this location. So this is a place which is commercially run. It needs to bring in money so that you can actually, out of this, do things. And that's why there is a very strong element of hospitality. There is a cost recovery. There's profits. There's things like that. You have to run that in that aspect and in that direction, as many of the successful, let's say, hubs and so on are doing. I mean, Impact Hub or others, they all have a commercial sort of business model behind it. And so here we're talking about that as well. So you have to actually make sure it's constantly operating. But
Okay.
it gains its strength because it's not only just a place, because it is actually one of the nodes of that global brain.
Yeah.
And so we're elevating Lesbos out of looking only at its own, at itself. So we're making Lesbos, in fact, part of a network. And so when I'm talking about Tunis or other locations, that becomes increasingly an interconnected world where let's say, things are happening. And let's maybe take the Mediterranean context as one, and that's very much linked. And my theme is migration, very much linked to creating a different type of, not always looking in direction of Northern Europe as the ultimate nirvana and the destination, but looking at other spaces as where it's worthwhile of living, working, and learning.
Okay, now I understand. Okay. Vasily, what's your point of view about that? About the idea, the vision? I think I can't hear you. I'm sorry. Probably. Vasily?
I was on mute, guys. Sorry. Yeah, of course. Yeah. So beautiful concept. Also Dimitri was yesterday. We were talking about digital nomads, as Kilian also mentioned. It's the future of work, and fully agree. I don't think there's a better place in the world than Lesbos, literally Lesbos, that you can work, live, and play. You know. So and again, I just want to say, irrespective of the refugee situation, this is the future. So every single island, especially a traditional place such as Lesbos with its natural beauty, the villages that it has, and the way we having an international summit here, and we're sitting within all globes of all parts of the world. So Lesbos, either way, in the future, even without the refugee situation, would eventually, I think the refugee situation, given the challenges there and where people want to help and support, it's a way that you can launch this ASAP. You know, so a community of all the diverse stakeholders. And I think as a moonshot thing, well, the important thing will be the local government, national and regional government. And I want to mention the one organization and incredible locals as a community to have their buy-in and support. And they are very forward-thinking and out-looking. A team called IDEA with Marcelo Ragli. So there's already a lot of existing things that are on Lesbos. We connected with this. So if we do this moonshot and we have the buy-in and the full support and clarifying the objectives and the goals, so that everyone wants to embrace this, you know, especially the local community that wants this type of situation. Yeah, it could be beautiful. And I would like to say, like, culture, art, and technology. This is what, you know, when you bring these to fuse together. So, and I would love to take that to the next level and ask you, how quick can we do the moonshot?
Okay, I think this addressed me right now. To be honest, we can do a moonshot. Okay, that's no problem. We just need a few commitments. First of all, it really is about the inclusion of Lesbos locals. But I think the idea of transforming a hotspot into a creation area is a very important vision. So if you invite us to do a moonshot in Lesbos, at Lesbos, we are in. Okay. Okay, I can shorten this a bit. The only thing is, I think, as mentioned before, we have to see it in a bigger context. Okay, who also has to be in, for example, the European Union, the Greece government, the local government, and so on and so on. But I think, as mentioned before, and sorry for that to mention it again, I think that what could inspire governments or any kind of stakeholder would be the idea that we could transform Lesbos into a living lab where the whole world can learn what happens if you just let go. What happens if, for example, far-right wingers enter the stage, and so on and so on, and how do you deal with that? You know what I'm talking about.
I understand. I want to, as a suggestion, because we had the earlier discussions with cultural infusion and talking about culture and the social economy. So panel number 2 was focused on the social economy. And if we're talking of the European Commission as well, and there's an incredible group of people within the European Commission that we've met and worked with that are driving the social economy, which is about digital tech solutions that have an impact, which Nina is a very involved in. And they also about civil society. So how do we get the voice of the citizen? So I think within the framework of the social economy, and again, the earlier discussion was the convergence. Peter from Cultural Infusion actually made a diagram to show the sweet spot of how public sector, private sector, and entrepreneurs, if you like, come together. So basically, how can this be a pilot also for social economy? So meaning impactful solutions, because then you've linked it directly to an existing organization from the European Commission that could support it and wants to support it, and they also so involved at the migration issue. So, you know, and as a network across Europe is what you've said, of establishing best practices, and not just Europe, Africa, where Tunisia is an African. One last point, African technology is incredible and it's disconnected to Europe. So how do we bring those leading technologies as a hub, as a space? So it ties in very well to what Killian was talking about, and exactly to your point that it's a bigger, it's within something else that already exists. That's I don't know if there was made sense. Did it make sense? Or but we want to talk about that again. So that's basically the thinking or thoughts.
You know, you already know that I agree with you. Okay. We talked about this yesterday, the day before yesterday, and so on. Yeah, of course. Of course.
Okay, good. So,
okay.
So when did you say you're coming for the moonshot?
I think maybe, come on, next week, in a week or two. Of course, we have to do some preparations, and we have to talk to certain kind of possible stakeholders. But I think we can do that afterwards, or in the next few days. You know, we are fascinated about the idea of transforming a whole region into something very special.
Awesome.
Because referring to the informations I have, Lesbos right now is at a certain point kind of hell. Okay, and this must be changed.
I would tend to disagree.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's the sort of the narrative. It's paradise, which hasn't really lived its potential.
Yeah.
And I think in a positive way, to bring that potential of an island, of a space which has nature, which has capacities, which has potential. To bring this to the forefront, to have a positive approach to that is absolutely necessary. Yeah. So I think the steps here would be to describe, in fact, or translate the discussion we had today into a whole, basically a proposal, if you want, in a classical sense,
Okay.
how to build up and orchestrate the different stages
Yeah.
of building up something beyond the current humanitarian action, building in and bringing in together the few activities which take place, and very valid activities, already combining local capacities with the newcomer capacities, and so there are a few projects and so on. But to describe that whole transformation, which would be possible over the months and years to come,
Yeah.
if the different stages are done. So in that sense, I would really urge ourselves to come up with that comprehensive description of how that transformation could look like,
Yeah.
and what are the different stages of external intervention possible. I mean, for instance, again, if you talk about building up a more community around Lesbos, in having a virtual tool or tools as the first step, where there is a community build-up and there's a regular discussion and problem solving and very concrete steps, and which could be recommended and eventually even implemented even now. That doesn't require a lot of funding or anything like this. Moving into the next stage of building up the moonshot as sort of the booster, the trigger for a more comprehensive part. And then, of course, if you're talking about the hub as a living, working, learning, and experience space, that again, that requires then as well support. So if we can describe that in a comprehensive way, people will follow us, and I'm sure that
for sure
that Nina will help us. That there will be a lot of people who finally see something beyond the sort of immediate humanitarian excitement in a negative connotation in a way, and at the same time saying, oh, we have to do also something for local people. In one of the earlier discussions panels, we talked about, somebody talked about, I can't remember her name, talked about, in refugee situations, there's always done something for the local people. Well, I mean, in my career, we did something for the local people, and you do that something when you have some extra money remaining, and it's more a token activity than rather sort of a comprehensive approach.
Okay.
So moving from that and describing that, and I think particularly the European context is here very important, building up financing mechanisms and tools, building up different new ways of boosting development and so on. I mean, if you talk about energy, for instance, I mean, this is a very interesting field for investors, for people to come in. But what is the right type of energy production on the island, which obviously something has to do with solar and so on and so forth. How do you deal with waste, etc.? So this is then, of course, if we can describe that the actions of first the moonshot, and then secondly, at the later stage, once it's physically there, of a hub, can actually constantly help to improve the sustainability of the island itself. And then, of course, and again, that aspect of interconnectivity of Lesbos, of being part of a chain of different locations all over the world, where we are reflecting what the 21st century is about. That is actually what we should be describing. And now that Nina is back, I'm sure really she missed this discussion. This is where she can help us tremendously to see where are the financing tools. Because the moonshot as such will cost money, because it means people have to come together. There's lots of costs involved in that. I mean, it's not only about travel and so on. There's a lot of, it has a budget. Building up the hub has a budget.
Yeah.
Building up a community, which is a sustainable co-creation community, that requires something, but there are funds available for that. But all this begins with being able to describe it and line it out. Thank you.
Kilian, I'm sorry because I was my battery was totally empty, so I had to charge my phone to be able to come back. And I'm sorry I missed the debate.
Anyway, we committed you to be actually the fundraiser for.
Just pay. Okay.
Bravo. for what? For platform?
No, what we're saying is we should move to, and we discussed just the concept of a moonshot, which brings together, like a brain brings together all the different aspects to a child. The more connections there are, the better. A moonshot is a concept where within 72 hours, you actually create a multidisciplinary sort of solution around the theme. It has been created initially to help with a startup idea, and we have moved this as well to a point where we're talking about impact, where we're talking about development. So we're bringing expertise from different angles to get out of the silos which usually exist within 72 hours together to come up with a solution package. So there's one is creating pretty immediately a community platform around Lesbos and solutions, which we discussed previously. Secondly, there's the moonshot as sort of as a trigger for larger projects to be developed. And thirdly, to move in the direction of the hub, which would be sort of, again, a physical location, supported and working, of course, very much in interrelation with the platform concept. But that needs to be put into basically a concept and project, which would then be shared with the relevant authorities, funders, investors, and so on and so forth. And that
This would be something like hackathon or something like that. If it is
No,
7.
no. Sorry. No, it's nothing like a hackathon. It's way more. That's physical action, and it's not just about some theories, strategies, or visions. It's all about real transformation. You can imagine it like you step in with an idea, and 72 hours you go out with your own company, company. All the connections, all, for example, your websites, your business plan, your business model, your investments, and so on. It's a real company. It's not like kind of a conference where you're exchanging visions or stuff like that. It really happens. That's the big thing about the moonshot.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Perfect.
yeah.
Thank
You can start working from day number 4.
Great.
Just Nina, the one thing as well is, and Kilian, you didn't mention about the presentation. Nina didn't see the presentation that you made. So I just think it would be additional context in what we discussed. But I think everything that we've said is awesome, and I would definitely will be keen to put some type of presentation together around that and see and together how we can take next steps around that. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Perfect.
You know,
And
please allow me one picture, okay? If
yeah.
you take all the problems, if you swipe them, okay, you you have kind of ground zero or a flat line, okay? And out of a flat line, you can create every form, every figure out of it, okay? So imagine this as a big chance, as a big possibility. We can only win because we've lost so far, okay? And this is a positive thought. It's according to what Kilian said before. And that's the point. And we could do that, I think, in a quite fast, as soon as we are as we are prepared and we can start doing the job. And probably we would need not only one moonshot, but 2 or 3 or perhaps 4 in parallel, and so on. And we would have to manage it not with 100, 150 bright minds, but around, don't know, 500, 600. But that's I think that's not really the problem. We had 3 prototypes, and we should have 4 by now, but then there was the COVID issue. I think it can be done, and I'm sure it can be done. The question is under what conditions and when, and we will need support from the European Union. I think otherwise it's just a theoretical happening.
So
you're muted, I guess, Vasile. Sorry, I didn't catch you right now.
don't you hear me?
Now I'm fine. Okay, sorry.
I actually lost my train of thought exactly. But now, sorry. So what I wanted to say is, and I'm hoping Nina will touch on it now with the next session, is from a European perspective, Nina mentioned this project that's the deadline is for 9th of June, but it involves governments. It's a government driven project across Europe. And it's focused on the social economy and by and large talks about what we've been discussing. And in fact, as soon as we were having discussions with Nina, she immediately mentioned this project, excuse me, and already, and has spoken to some people already. So it's within the context, again, of the social economy, as I mentioned, there's a whole group of people that are doing incredible things within the European Commission. And just to also emphasize one point is, there's a social economy capital city every year. Last year was Strasbourg. This year is Mannheim.
Yeah.
So we hope that we can take whatever we're discussing here and go and this is what Nina had also suggested, to consider that we go and present it in Mannheim as part of the social economy thing, linking into this project that Nina is involved with. And ideal scenario is, and this is why I wanted to showcase some of the social enterprises on Lesbos, that Lesbos can become a social economy capital. But the key thing here is the locals to really, they have to be front and center. I mean, they have to want and understand what the objectives and goals are, and being, it's not, oh, we got an awesome project here, take it. They need to be completely, especially within the context of the newcomers and so forth. But the importance of this, of the European Commission social economy perspective is that, and this network, the ideal scenario is that across Europe, we're showing solidarity and how we can support the people of Lesbos, the locals, and also say we want asylum seekers to come to our cities because we recognize their skills and their talents. And we want to support Lesbos as well, because it's also an opportunity for those people. And I'm glad to see that we have Fred Kastner on the call as well, that at London with WeWork, their team is doing unbelievable things with a program that they run and within the network that they've created. Very inspiring things. And so if we can, and this was connecting these different things that are not to reinvent the wheel, but what's happening. So, and I think your moonshot with the project that Kilian presented, and with all the stakeholders that we've had, and I'd like Dimitri just to also make one quick point before we go to the next thing, because he had mentioned a project in the UK that funds, that could fund these type of initiatives. So, with a group here, and I would love to, I know it's a bit difficult from a COVID perspective to set a date, but we will definitely communicate back to all of you to say, this is what we're thinking. What are your thoughts on this? So we can actually take some tangible steps. And I hope that the latest, I would like to see Lesbos in the summer as the first phase. But if that's not possible because of COVID, then I would like to, and with Nina's support, that we can actually go to Mannheim and present that, which is in November. So social economy. So how do we, the moonshot is how the social economy can embrace tech for good and inspire a better future. I don't know if, Gerard, you mean that feeling? I don't know if you're with me again, or if you, what are your thoughts there? Are you with me, Gerard?
Okay. Yeah. I like it. I like it. You know, it's. I think I told you yesterday about our vision, our project of the Phoenix engine. Okay, so the Phoenix engine, I think it's pretty much it's a self explaining term. Probably Lesbos could be the clutch of the Phoenix engine. The Phoenix engine, Kilian, I think we didn't talk about that. Is or shall be providing moonshots, permanent moonshots, not always as a physical event, but also digital and so on and so on. And I think we could embed the Lesbos project into this Phoenix engine circle.
Sounds great, Gerard. So that's fantastic, and definitely will. Yeah.
Yeah, but really, what we really need in order to be able to provide that, and we must not fail. It's one of our basic statements is we don't disappoint people, but therefore we need the right conditions. That's the most important thing about that. So we really need help, and we really need support of the European Union, because otherwise we could not manage that. That's the problem.
The locals, we need the local
Yeah.
people must want this. Without the locals, it doesn't matter what the European Commission says. The local authorities and people need to show an interest for that. But yes, I fully agree with you about people.
And it really is. So sorry to say that, but I really have to mention it. One of the basic criteria is we have to have the money, because this really costs a lot of things, but it will be way cheaper than the alternative. Okay. So yeah, really, it really is, and the alternative for Europe, probably, for sure. And that's the matter of fact. So we need commitments from the locals, from the Greece government, and above all from the European Union. Really.
Cool. Dimitri, just some final thoughts, and we going into the next panel from you.
Yeah. Yeah, even from yesterday, you remember I was supportive a lot of the idea of something like Innovation Hub. And I want to agree with the point of Gerard and you, Vasily, that it needs to be also for the benefit of the locals, not to be like for some very big investors, create something luxury where you attract only, the rich people, and it's all inclusive. No, it needs to be something that the local community will have more jobs. They will go to consume, in the city and in the island, and also maybe jobs and opportunities for the refugees to learn something, to work, to even to bring to more multicultural experience in the total concept. This is one point. Because I want to say to the non-Greeks in the chat that like in Rhodos or Creta, we have some very big hotels which are all inclusive. They're mega hotels, and in Greek perception, I don't think they're considered something good for the local community or island. So it's something we need to take care how to bring back, to include, as you also said, the locals, let's say. This is one point, and not only for the VIP visitors. And yeah, and for the moonshot, I was wondering, this just brainstorming idea, if this is something, let's say in the summer, probably it will be difficult for many people to travel to Lesbos, but maybe something which as an experiment can take place in Lesbos for the people who are already in Lesbos. Maybe, for a young kind of people like 20 to 35, include also refugees or entrepreneurs, and try to build this. I mean, I know it's not the official concept, but more to make it local. And because of COVID, you cannot really do I guess, in 3 months, the big vision of this, but it could be like a stepping stone to give a taste to the locals, refugees, and what is the potential of entrepreneurship, of having a hub and bringing everyone together. That's it. And also about the digital hub with the buildings and all this, I can say that even this could be if there are the money, a good model of a smart community or smart city or smart environment, to bring the some modern infrastructure which can save costs, have automation, contactless experience through IoT and analytics. And Nena will say we need to bring blockchain. I'm not so much in this. The point is, if it is something new in some area, it can be built with the new standards, like smart lights, smart infrastructure for waste collection, water, and all of this. And this could be like a good example for how a small location, a small place, can innovate and can do something like the big cities. Because we see only innovation in smart cities for big cities or mega cities like London, Singapore, Barcelona, but not so much for the villages, for islands. So we can create a good example and inspire and maybe hopefully replicate. Yeah, these are some thoughts.
Can I? Yeah, I really like that idea of basically a localized moonshot, but it would require, and this is something to Vasily and the team, to do a mapping of which capacities you would have in Lesbos and eventually in Greece. It will be probably easier to travel for somebody from Athens to Lesbos than international travel. So in that sense, that could be sort of a first step where you have primarily Greek and local experts. Again on the concept, it has to be really experts. That's why it's not a hackathon as such. Yeah. It's bringing in marketing experts, people who really have a wide experience and knowledge in the various fields, so that there is really the top notch already worked on. So that could be some intermediate step also to promote the concept further, and then you're moving it to the next to bring, and that could be connected very much to an international platform where people contribute and participate from all over the world, while there is a local moonshot ongoing, which needs to be facilitated as well. And we need to make sure that the people from the team would be available to somehow get there. But I think there can be that combination between a physical moonshot on location with inputs from people from teams working in other moonshot locations. And Gerhard, I mean, maybe this is something you need to think of, that you have a central moonshot team, which is sort of physically the quote unquote local experts. And they basically bring tasks to a team which sits in, again, virtually all over the world, and which works together on whatever, building a website. You don't.
Yeah, we're working on that.
It's not but you can really task different teams and saying, okay, you build now the website for the Lesbos thing. You're building. You come up with an analysis of tourism if there's no tourism experts available, and so on and so forth. So that could be thought of as well, which again, I think is stimulated by the Corona opportunity.
It is an opportunity. Please allow me just 1 minute. I promise. Okay. I agree with all that, but please, I really have to mention one thing. The moonshot is based on a real hyper network, and it is a hyper network because the fields of competences are so big. We are working with particle researchers, astronomers, space engineers, managers, and experts from all imaginable fields. And the thing is, of course, you have to integrate and include the locals, but we really have to take care. We need all those expertises, because otherwise it wouldn't really work, and then it would turn out to be something like a hackathon where you're left with ideas, suggestions, but nothing is transformed, and nothing can really provide the impact we're working on. Please, we really have to keep that in mind. But
Okay.
the good thing is we will find a solution. We always do. That's why we created the Moonshot.
Perfect. I love that. Awesome, Gerard. Thank you very much for that. And I will definitely continue the conversation there. So, Arthur, if I can ask you to please wrap this up and
I will need to say goodbye, guys. Okay.
Bye.
I'm here from the morning. It was a very interesting discussion, and Vasily, thanks, and Arthur for organizing. And hopefully something will come out of this. Vasily, keep us posted. Let us know what we can do. Okay.
Thank you, Dimitri. Just before you go, I don't know if you have 5 minutes to listen to Fred, who's actually based in London. But I understand if you don't, and it's on video and you can see it next time. But
no,
yeah,
I have 5 minutes. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for mentioning.
So awesome. Arthur, would you go ahead?
Okay.
Or
No, go ahead.
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, guys. Well, thank you for participating, guys, in this panel number 4. It was very inspiring and concrete oriented ideas, and so thank you for providing that. Now we are going to so yeah, thank you to Vasily, thank you to Kilian, thank you to Gerard and Dimitrios for these panels.